How many times have I told y'all that Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and this MAGA Republican administration is absolutely racist? That they are anti-black. Now, we know they anti-LGBTQ. We know that. But they anti-black, okay? And here you have a federal judge in Massachusetts appointed by Republican conservative Ronald Reagan. Now, Reagan didn't like black people. We all know that too. This federal judge, in ruling in a lawsuit regarding the canceling of grants in the National Institutes of Health, literally said that this is the most blatant discrimination that he has seen in 40 years on the bench. Folks, this is crazy. This here is a New York Times article. And the ruling from the bench, Judge William G. Young of the Federal District Court for the District of Massachusetts, blasted the Trump administration, ordering them to restore much of the funding pending an appeal. Look at this quote, y'all. This represents racial discrimination and discrimination against America's LGBTQ community. That's what this is. He said, look at this here. Judge Young, a Reagan appointee with 40 years of experience as a federal judge, said the government's rationale for canceling some of the grants, which also supported research into topics such as gender identity and equity in all healthcare, appeared to be rooted in prejudice. He cited the administration's very public efforts to eliminate any trace of diversity and equity initiatives from the federal government, as well as its attacks on transgender people. Now, when you go through reading this article, he said that over the course of his career, he had, quote, never seen government racial discrimination like this, and felt duty-bound to state his conclusion about the government's intent. Quote, I would be blind not to call it out. Folks, this is crazy. It's unbelievable. Now, see, this is not, oh, that's y'all just saying this stuff. No. Now, when they had the trial, he was grilling Trump's lawyers, okay? Hitting them up, blasting them about their decision-making. Now, Andrew Nixon, a spokesman for the Department of Health and Human Services, said the agency stands by its decision to end funding for research that prioritizes ideological agendas. That's what he calls it. Ideological agendas. Look at this. Leading up to the ruling on Monday, Judge Young repeatedly pressed for details about the government's decision-making in terminating the grants, expressing deep skepticism that it had followed normal, dispassionate processes. On several occasions, he expressed dismay that much of the publicly available information about the cancellations had to be gleaned from GrantWatch, an independent database put together by a small team of academics who worked to piece together the extent of the Trump administration's cuts through their crowdsourcing. The way that, y'all, this is crazy. This is literally what the judge said. Can you imagine? Can you imagine this whole deal? I mean, in looking at this story, I mean, ProPublica also had their breakdown right here. It says, in Monday's ruling, the judge determined that the directives that led to the grant terminations were, quote, arbitrary and capricious, and said they had, quote, no force and effect. Now, his ruling only covers the grants that the plaintiffs identified. But it was absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy what he said. Come back. ProPublica story. He also noted the administration's targeting of LGBTQ plus research. Quote, it is palpably clear these directives and the set of terminated grants here also are designed to frustrate, to stop research that may bear on the health. We are talking about health here, the health of Americans, of our LGBTQ community. That's appalling. Folks, this is a Reagan-appointed federal judge. Kush Desai, White House spokesman, this is how they responded. Quote, "It was appalling that a federal judge would use court proceedings to express his political views and preferences," adding that, quote, "justice ceases to be administered when a judge clearly rules on the basis of his political ideologies." Desai also defended the administration's policies targeting diversity, equity, inclusion, calling it, quote, "a flawed and racist logic." He also said that the administration was committed to, quote, "restoring the gold standard of science," which he claimed involved a recognition of the biological reality of the male and female sexes. The NIH, he said, is shifting, quote, "research spending to address our chronic disease crisis instead, not to validate ideological activism." Joe, you're an attorney. Can you recall a federal judge, a conservative judge appointed by a Republican, excoriating the government in such stark racial language?
No, is the short answer. You know, even some of Bush 1 and Bush 2's appointees were more moderate. They were conservative. But this guy he's a conservative. He's a conservative's conservative, it seems like. And to the extent that the government wants to allege that he's stating his political ideology, well, maybe so if his political ideology is actually pro-Constitution. You know, there are some conservatives out here who believe in the Constitution, and arbitrary and capricious is a big problem. Clearly, this is, you know, Project 2025 and its ilk and its spirit. So you just go and you just slash everything having to do with DEI, having to do with LGBTQ plus, you know, then incidentally, of course, next door to that, having to do with trans issues, et cetera. And you just get rid of all of it just because. And you just can't do it that way, particularly at this level. And so it ought to say something that a judge with this political leaning, how he's been, who appointed him and how long he's been on the bench. It's not his first rodeo. He's been doing this longer than a lot of these guys in the administration or puppies have been alive. So when he says something, it ought to resonate in that if someone has any shred of believing in the Constitution, they should know that they got it wrong here in terms of how they did what they did. However, it's just like anything else. You don't even have to be in the law. You don't even have to be dealing with legal issues and constitutional issues to understand what they're doing politically. They often accuse someone, whether it's a judge, whether it's another politician, or whether it's certain people, whether it's Democrats, whether it's independents, whoever it is, of doing exactly what they're doing. So what they're doing is blaming the judge for being political, when in fact, the judge is being constitutional, and they're the ones that are being political, which is why the things that they're trying to cut are the things that they're trying to cut. And so I'm glad that he pointed that out. He pointed out also that this only applies to the things that have been named. Maybe that means hint, hint, hint. You should bring a couple more of these other people, other agencies, as to other things that have been cut as arbitrarily and as capriciously. But yeah, in answer to your question, no, I haven't seen it like this. And in another world, hopefully with someone, it resonates to demonstrate that the administration has a problem with the way they're doing what it is that they're doing, and that this can be a template to allow us and to remind us to keep going as it pertains to the courts, because a lot of this is so blatantly racist, so blatantly fill in the blank, et cetera, that we may be able to come in under a standard like this, bring funding back in, make some things happen in the meantime, hopefully win this election coming up, so that some of these things could potentially change permanently, and or some of this ridiculous legislation doesn't get passed.
Mustafa, here's what's quite interesting here, and I'm just pulling up. Give me 1 second. I want to pull this up here. This is from the Federal Judiciary Center. This judge, 85 years old, nominated by Ronald Reagan on March 8th, 1985, confirmed by the Senate on April 3rd, 1985. First of all, that's real quick. 1 month. He assumed senior status on July 1st, 2021. Undergrad, Harvard University. Law school, Harvard Law. U.S. Army captain. Law clerk for Supreme Court of Massachusetts. Private practice, Special Assistant Attorney General for Massachusetts. Chief Counsel for the Governor of Massachusetts. Associate Justice, the Massachusetts Superior Court, and he's lectured at Boston College Law School, Boston University Law School, and Harvard Law School. We talked a lot on this show about how judges were so important. And a lot of people, I don't care, I don't want to hear about no Biden-Harris judges. I hope all these Simple Simon yahoos now understand, with all of these judges ruling against Trump, according to the law, I hope they now understand why federal judges matter. A lot of these judges ruling against Trump are appointed by Republican presidents, even some of Trump's own appointees. Not that fool Judge Cannon in Florida, ruling against him on the rule of law. And what these judges are saying is, I don't give a damn if you're MAGA. I don't give a damn if you believe in a theocracy. In this country, you are to abide not by your Bible, not by Project 2025, not by the Heritage Foundation, not by the Federalist Society, but by the United States Constitution.
And that's exactly what it should be. And you can always tell who's real, right? Judges that are actually living up to the letter of the law, but also bringing into their analysis, what are the public health impacts, right? So when you see these other judges who you know are not doing the right thing, they often don't want to talk about the public health impacts, right? They don't want to talk about the public health impacts to the LGBTQIA community. They definitely don't want to talk about the health impacts that are going on in relationship to Black communities. And I'm sure that this judge took that into consideration. He understood, based upon the folks that he talked to, that we die at twice the rate from cardiovascular disease. So if you're a real judge, you're going to make sure that you're pulling that information in, or that we have the highest death rates from cancer, whether it is prostate, colorectal, or breast cancer. Black folks are dying from that higher than anyone else inside of our country. So as you're interpreting the law, you're looking at these grants that are out there, then you got to take that into consideration and asking, are you intentionally trying to kill these people by taking away the research, by taking away the training, by taking away the dollars that are necessary, whether it is in colleges and universities or in community organizations or whoever it might be. He probably took into consideration also that the infant mortality rate is 2 times for our communities, twice as likely our babies are to die, or mom's mortality is 3 to 4 times higher. Or for both the LGBT community and the Black community as a whole, 42% of the new cases that are out there are caught up into that. Or diabetes, with 60% more likely to have that, and then leads to other types of diseases. So a good judge is taking all this information and then asking the question to the folks who are trying to take these things away, how does this help? How does this actually help to move the needle in a positive way? And how does it line up with the law?
Randy, I am reading the political story here. The judge says, come on, my iPad, Anthony. I'm hesitant to draw this conclusion, but I have an unflinching obligation to draw it. That this represents racial discrimination and discrimination against America's LGBT community. That's what this is. I would be blind not to call it out. My duty is to call it out. Go down further in the story. This is crazy. He says, you are bearing down on people of color because of their color. The Constitution will not permit that. Have we fallen so low? Have we no shame? Then, Young said the administration made virtually no effort to push back on claims that the cuts were discriminatory. We're talking about health here, the health of Americans, of our LGBT community. That's appalling. Now check this out. The Department of Justice, which defended, this is a political story, which defended NIH, argued the terminations align with congressional mandates to improve research. Quote, research programs based on gender identity are often unscientific, have little identifiable return on investment, and do nothing to enhance the health of many Americans. Many such studies ignore rather than seriously examine biological realities. It is an improvement to eliminate these, DOJ lawyer Thomas Ports Jr. said during the hearing. Young pressed the DOJ for an explanation. Where's the support for that? I'm asking you to just explain to me, often used to support unlawful discrimination. I see no evidence of that. A federal judge, a conservative judge appointed by a hardcore Republican, Ronald Reagan, issues this type of ruling. And you know who's real quiet, Randy? All them Negroes who were skinning and grinning at the White House. I don't hear nothing from Pastor Darrell Scott. Oh, he was tweeting yesterday about how they should bomb MSNBC and CNN. And I tweeted his ass blasting him. Oh, then they was sitting here. I ain't heard nothing from Michaela Montgomery, the little loudmouth out of Atlanta who was with Trump at Chick-fil-A. What Angela Stanton King, she ain't said nothing. She was on Willie D's podcast. She ain't talked about this here. Where you at, Joseph Pinion? Where you at, King Randall? Where you at? That little elf, Terrence Williams? Where y'all at? Where you at, Davis Harris Jr.? It's amazing how these happy-go-lucky Negroes. Where you at, Paris Denard? Where you at? Oh, where you at? That little child with the Florida A&M, Sharice Lane. Where you at? It's amazing. See, they get mad. I call them to help. Because that's all y'all are. Yeah, where your ass at, Tiger Woods? You rolled up in the Black History Month reception, draped in your Congressional Medal of Honor. I'm sorry, your Presidential Medal of Freedom. But y'all don't say nothing about the racism coming from these folks. Oh, I know what it is. Where you at, Alveda King? Where you at, Byron Donalds? Where you at, Tim Scott? Where you at, Burgess Owens? Where you at? What's the little one from Texas? Wesley Hunt. Where you at? Where y'all at? It's amazing how silent they are. They don't say nothing about all of the racial discriminatory stuff that goes down. Where you at, Bruce Lavelle? Where you at? That's why I call y'all to help. They only call y'all to help them look diverse. Y'all are the help, pure and simple. Randy, go ahead.
They're the absolute help, and they have no room in this conversation because it's so refreshing to see integrity because we haven't seen that lately. And I appreciate that the judge said, my duty is to call it out. Your duty is not like the people you just listed to kiss butt, to shuck and jive, to gain favor. That's not the duty. The duty is to serve the Constitution of the United States of America. And that's what that judge did. And he recognizes that what they are doing, what they are trying to do, attempting to do, these executive orders, is honestly orders to kill us. Honestly, orders to kill us, because it wasn't until recently that Black people willingly were able to participate in studies that they did at the NIH. We weren't even considered when they came out with statistics or came out with health recommendations. It wasn't about us. They didn't care about us. They weren't looking at diseases like sickle cell anemia that affects us to a higher rate. Just like Brother Mustafa just said, they weren't talking about the health disparities when we have children. It wasn't anything that was considered. And so that's what they want to go back to, that the only people's health that are considered and studied and paid attention to, again, are white, male, and heterosexual. And those are the people they care about. So, but it is so refreshing to see someone who is basing his decisions and has some integrity in basing his decisions on how the Constitution bids him to, and not on trying to please a wannabe dictator.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
It's a bunch of stuff we didn't get to, but I got to go ahead and play this here, because there's nothing better to me than seeing Pete Hegseth get his ass just slapped all around. I mean, just smacked all around. Courtesy of Senator Tammy Duckworth. This is a great 5 minutes and 13 seconds. Roll that.
In response to my colleague from Oklahoma, I believe the Secretary of Defense has just responded last week and admitted that the $1 billion mission that he led against the Houthis, who do not have a Navy, has not restored the transit of U.S. flag commercial vessels through the Red Sea, and in fact has resulted in the loss of 2 F-18 Hornets to the tune of $60 million apiece, as well as, I believe the last count was 7 Reaper drones to the tune of another $200 million. You are blowing through money like my fellow cadets and I did in our First Liberty after basic camp. Luckily, I didn't end up with a questionable tattoo. Your failures, Mr. Secretary, since you've taken office has been staggering. You sent classified operational information over Signal to chest thump in front of your wife, who, by the way, has no security clearance, risking service member lives in the process. You blew the $1 billion fight against the Houthis, whom, again, as my colleague says, has no Navy, and yet you lost all of those aircraft. You've created such a hostile command environment that no one wants to serve as your chief of staff or work with you in other senior DoD leadership roles. But what we should all be talking about more than all of this is that you have an unjustified, un-American misuse of the military in American cities, pulling resources and attention away from core missions to the detriment of the country, the warfighters, and yes, the war fighting that you claim to love. I don't know if this is because you are too inexperienced and incompetent to understand the real threats facing our country, or if it's because you are just an unqualified yes man who can't tell the president how to keep Americans safe. You are focusing on renaming bases for Confederate generals. You said just now to Senator King that to a man and to a woman, we would rather be associated with the old Confederate names. Well, I am one of those women. I served at Fort Rucker, Alabama, a base that was named for a traitor who took arms against the United States of America, led troops who killed Americans. It was renamed for Mike Novosel, a Medal of Honor recipient, who in his citation for the Medal of Honor includes that he saved 29 American lives, to include hovering backwards in a helicopter towards an enemy bunker where a wounded American was laying and saved that person, including after being taken fire himself. I know a little something about what it takes to fly a helicopter when you've been hit by enemy fire. That was heroic. I'd rather be associated with Mike Novosel than a failed Confederate traitor. I don't know whether you are inexperienced or too incompetent, but I wonder when you will actually focus on our nation's warfighting mission. We know that California is just a deliberate, systematic, political, and dangerous campaign led by you. We should not be using our military to play cops against Americans. General Kane, as chairman, a key part of your job is to coordinate military planning across the joint force. Is the department currently incorporating into any military plans expanding the use of the reserve forces to include the National Guard or active duty troops to support domestic law enforcement, including in other locations in the United States?
Senator, we careful.
No, General.
Well, it's not really a yes or no question, Madam Senator. We plan all kinds of different things.
I think it is a yes or no question.
I'm not aware of anything, but the reason why I'm answering is the tags may be looking at something that I'm not aware of.
What are you doing at your level? You're not aware of that happening at your level? Because we know that on his first day, President Trump directed U.S. Northern Command to revise its unified command plan to add new planning requirements to combat, and I quote, criminal activities. A series of follow-up executive orders continue to redirect DOD priorities to supporting domestic law enforcement, including one in April that tells DOD, and I quote, use national security assets for law and order. In other words, do law enforcement's job. I'd like to enter these executive orders into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
Secretary Hegseth, you say you are focused on warfighting and warriors. These are your words. Yet you are diverting untold DOD resources and attention to a fundamentally non-military mission of domestic policing. Across the country, we have qualified police officers who are trained for that mission. They know those streets better than the Marines you deploy to Los Angeles, who normally focus on the Indo-Pacific. And you recently approved 700 more troops in 3 other states to do admin and logistics works for ICE. You say all of this is valuable training, but I would much rather have our troops do tough, realistic training relevant to high-end combat. Instead of typing in spreadsheets for ICE, they should be conducting live fire maneuver exercises. Instead of patrolling American neighborhoods and standing in front of federal buildings, they should be rehearsing call for fire missions. We have local police who can stand in front of those federal buildings. And the list of distractions goes on. You are encouraging the DOD workforce to go work for DHS in increasing numbers. You're pulling the military away from facing foreign enemies who literally say things like death to America. And you're putting troops with weapons aimed at Americans. Mr. Secretary, let the military get back to its real job. Stop forcing them to do DHSs. And if you want to be DHS Secretary, maybe you can apply for that job when you're fired from this one due to your incompetence.
Ooh, damn, Rebecca, she read his ass for filth.
That was the clip I needed to see going into Juneteenth. I mean, what more can you say? Look, she is a true patriot. She served honorably in our nation's military. And so when we talk about experts, that's what expertise looks like. So we saw a clear someone who is not an expert but has the position. And then we saw an expert. We saw someone who is very thoughtful when it comes to policy, especially around our military. Our military is never supposed to be deployed in U.S. cities towards American citizens. That is something that our military, that's not even within the purview of our military. And so what we're seeing is an administration that's using very unconstitutional measures for political advantage. And so Americans ought to be extremely upset with what's going on. And I wish more Americans would truly understand all of the unconstitutional things that we're seeing that's happening in this moment.
If this was good times, Eugene, they'd be like, damn. Eugene, if you're going to respond, your ass can't be on mute.
My bad. Sorry, you're not gonna have it muting up. All right, you mute up, mute out. But I mean, it's like it's talk about getting the business clear. I mean, she essentially told him. She said, "Listen, we grew here, you flew here, and don't belong here, and we still gonna be here after they get your ass up out of here." Senator Duckworth. We appreciate her service to this country and her continued service to this country, because look, you need people like her that literally have the lived experience to be able to actually, deal with an out of control, Pentagon executive branch in real time. I believe she outranked him in service. I know now, of course, he's, SecDef. But, the thing is this, he will eventually be fired. Whether it's a botched response to eventual response to Iran or something else, Trump will eventually get rid of him. But it'll be senators like Senator Duckworth and others that'll still be standing strong afterwards. But she told him, said, listen, you knew here, we grew here, you flew here. And we're still gonna be here when they get your ass up out of here.
Bottom line here, that's the kind of heat. Look, he been a pompous ass on Capitol Hill all week, Robert. That's how you need to put that fool in his place.
Yeah, and for people who didn't watch the entire hearing, that was the entire hearing was like that, with people reading the riot act. And this is why I encourage people to understand, don't look at the people at the top of the Trump cabinet. These are actors. He literally pulled half of them off of TV. They don't know anything about it. They are just there to go look on camera and do things. Dig down into the documents and find the undersecretaries, find the technocrats who you've never heard of. Those are the people who are really running the government. Do you really think they put the drunk guy from Fox and Friends Weekend in charge of a $1 trillion budget? No. So when I say that this is important, you have to look at what the current U.S. policy is with regards to Iran. The reason that we are massing aircraft carriers in the region, bringing a third aircraft carrier from the Straits of Malacca to the Persian Gulf, the reason we are repositioning as many as 50 area refueling tankers from the east coast of the U.S. to European command, the reason 2 months ago we repositioned 19 B-2 stealth bombers from Missouri to Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, is because very clearly we're about to go bomb the hell out of Iran. And Israel has already started taking out the early warning radars, taking out the command and control centers, assassinating much of their high-level leadership, taking out Hezbollah and the Houthis and Hamas, who are their proxies in the region. But folks need to understand that Iraq and Iran are not the same thing. Iran has a space program. Iran has one of the most powerful drone armies known to mankind, so much so they were selling drones to Russia the last 2 years. If you think we're simply going to go in and in 2 weeks remove them the same way they did Saddam during Desert Storm, that is not going to take place. And before this administration runs us headlong into another 20-year entanglement in the Middle East, we need to be asking serious questions about what exactly is happening, what it will mean, and whether or not we should be spilling American blood for a war that Netanyahu started.
Bottom line is, way to go, Senator Tammy Duckworth.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hegseth III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
NAACP, for the first time in their 116-year history, are not inviting the sitting president or the vice president of their convention. They cite Donald Trump and his shameless and despicable violation of the United States Constitution as a reason for that. Let me read for you the statement that they actually sent out today regarding this decision. For 116 years, the NAACP has invited the sitting president of the United States to address the NAACP National Convention. Regardless of their political party, there's a rich history of both Republicans and Democrats attending our convention, from Harry Truman to Dwight D. Eisenhower to Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and beyond. We're nonpartisan and always welcome those who believe in democracy and the Constitution. But right now, it's clear Donald Trump is attacking our democracy and our civil rights. He believes more in the fascist playbook than in the U.S. Constitution. This playbook is radical and un-American. The president has signed unconstitutional executive orders to oppress voters and undo federal civil rights protections. He has illegally turned the military on our communities, and he continually undermines every pillar of our democracy to make himself more powerful and to personally benefit from the U.S. government. The NAACP convention has always been a place where people across the country come together to map out our advocacy and mobilization strategies to advance civil rights and democracy for all. Our annual convention is meant to be a safe space for all people, regardless of political ideology, who believe in multiracial democracy and the ideal of building a more perfect union. To that end, the NAACP has made the decision to break with tradition and not invite Donald Trump or J.D. Vance this year. The administration does not respect the Constitution or the rule of law. It would be a waste of our time and energy to give a platform to fascism, which would be unacceptable. Julian, I wish NABJ took the same stance last year when they invited Donald Trump to our convention.
I agree with you fully, Roland. I think the NAA has always, I remember, years ago, protesting some of the people who have been invited, but they've been very, very nonpartisan, and basically it's a sitting president. We respect a sitting president. This president is a lightning rod for disrespect. There is nothing about him or his policies that deserve respect. Right on to Derek and the NAACP for drawing a line there and saying, oh, hell no, because all he's going to do is go in there and lie. I mean, just basically lie. These people don't know the truth of it, laid in the bed with them. I mean, so it's really important for us to draw some lines here. Understanding a number of things. One of the things that I frequently point out is that these Republicans talk about Joe Biden's mental acuity. But we have a living example of someone unraveling in our faces, unraveling with just pure lies. But the other thing is he has no place in our civil rights organizations, our traditional civil rights organizations, when he's attempting to take DEI away, when he wants to take names off of airplanes and submarines, Medgar Evers, Harriet Tubman, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Come on, these are our allies. And so to do that is to basically thumb his nose in our face. And if we were to invite him under those circumstances, to paraphrase Roland Martin, we would be a bunch of GD fools.
Look, I think it's
No, at the end of the day, this is stand on the right side of history time. Like, how are you going to be remembered? Whether we're talking about organizations like the NAACP, whether we're talking about journalists like Moran who said, hey, I got to tell the truth. This is not the time for people to just play things by the book normally. Well, this is how we've done it for 116 years. This is how we've done it this has been our tradition. This is how we do as a news organization. We're fighting a wannabe dictator who does not believe in any types of laws. And we have discovered through this whole process with Trump that we don't really have laws in this country as it relates to certain things. We have norms. And all someone has to do is come along and just say, no, I'm not going to go with that norm. And everything gets thrown into disarray. And this is why it's important to fight back against Trump at every single level. How many people on Senator Lee's staff today? How many people who sponsored his campaign withdrew, are saying they're not going to support them in the next campaign unless he recognizes it's wrong? And all of these things that are happening that people are not cleaning up for need to be documented and called out so we can let people know where they stood in this moment. NAACP could have easily said, well, this is what we've done. But they said no, because they decided that they wanted to be on the side of what's right. And principles are more important than some type of tradition. And I applaud them for doing so. More organizations need to do the same.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hegseth III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Folks, we've talked on this show about Memphis allowing Elon Musk AI company to put up these turbines. They claim they have the proper amount. The others say, no, that's not the case. We've had Representative Justin Pearson on about that. Well, clearly the NAACP agrees. The NAACP and the Southern Environmental Law Center are going to sue Elon Musk AI company, XAI, claiming it is polluting black neighborhoods in Memphis without permission. Joining us right now to discuss this law. First of all, there was a news conference earlier today. We're going to play the news conference, and then we'll be joined by someone from the Memphis NAACP. So here's what we'll say today at the news conference.
This morning, the Southern Environmental Law Center, on behalf of the NAACP, sent a letter to XAI and its affiliates, letting them know that we intend to file suit under the Clean Air Act in response to XAI's continued use of unpermitted methane gas turbines in southwest Memphis. For the last year, these turbines have been pumping hazardous and smog-forming pollution into the air in South Memphis, a community already overburdened with industrial pollution. These pollutants can cause increased rates of asthma, heart disease, respiratory illness, and even cancer. The law is abundantly clear. XAI needed to get an air permit before installing and operating any of the turbines at their facility. Its failure to get a permit is an obvious violation of the Clean Air Act. Over the last year, you've no doubt heard a lot about a 364-day exemption that supposedly allows XAI to run these dirty turbines without any permits or any oversight. I want to be clear, there is no such exemption that applies to turbines. And nobody, not the mayor, not the Chamber of Commerce, not XAI, not the Shelby County Health Department, have been able to point to a single legal citation that would authorize these turbines to operate without a permit.
Yes. This opens the floodgates for more data centers to drain our community of resources and further pollute it.
That's right.
Where is the impact study on the number of jobs this will bring and the effect on the environment? South and Southwest Memphis have long been the dumping ground for toxic corporations.
Today is an extraordinary day in this movement for justice rooted in love, as we demand that clean air is a human right. And there is not a person, no matter how wealthy or how powerful, that can deny the fact that everybody has a right to breathe clean air. It's not a feeling, it's a fact.
Yes, sir.
This notice to sue XAI is a clarion call for unity across our city and across our county to unite in the fight.
Yes, sir.
There's no more time for political platitudes or to have leaders put their heads in the sand. Now is the time to stand on the side of the people. Mayor Young, Mayor Harris, Director Dr. Michelle Taylor, now is the time to stand on the side of the people. I want to give special thanks to the president of the National NAACP, Derek Johnson, to NAACP.
Joining us now is Bray Connor, the NAACP's director of the Center for Environmental and Climate Justice. Bray, glad to have you here. So how long have y'all been looking at this, folks? Representative Pearson has been talking about it for a very long time. Other residents have been talking about it. And when did y'all decide that now was the time to launch this action?
Well, thanks so much for having me this evening. The NAACP, as you know, because of our branches and our state conferences, who have been a part of many environmental and climate justice actions for a number of years. They were on the ground looking at these issues since XAI had started operating. They were asking questions, concerned about their health. They were concerned about what this would mean for the community. And so our branches and our state conferences, which are a part of our larger national footprint, they realized that there was an issue that garnered the attention not only of just the residents in South Memphis, but also of the entire country, to recognize that South Memphis was being seen as a sacrifice zone for this dirty data center.
What I'm still confused by is that if you build something in the city and the county, there is a process. There's a process, and y'all have been saying that they have 30 plus turbines. They've been saying they have 15. I don't understand how hard this is. Doesn't the city or the county have the actual documents that show how many turbines they're using?
Well, your question is a great one. And the fact that the community had to uncover the extra turbines that were operating in South Memphis, it tells a larger story of the lack of transparency, the fact that the community themselves had to go out and uncover these methane gas turbines that have been operating in their communities. And these are the questions that we are asking. These are the questions that our branch leaders and our state conference president and those leadership members are also asking. Why is it that we have elected officials? Why is it that there is a county health department? Why is it that there are so many different entities who should be asking these questions, who should have the answers to these questions, but it really has lied in the hands of the communities to actually come forward and say, we actually, operated drones and were able to actually see that there were additional gas turbines that were operating at this data center.
Well, what I don't even understand is why even have drones? I mean, I don't understand. If you build something in the city and the county, there's a permitting process. There are inspectors. So no one from the city or the county has physically inspected this facility to confirm how many turbines are there?
Well, what I can tell you is that these are the questions that community members are asking. There's been a lot of conversations that have happened without there being any transparency. That was something that we highlighted in the letter that we sent even before this notice of the intent to sue, that the community members have been saying, why is there not more transparency? Why has there not been more public hearings? There's been a couple flyers that don't have a lot of information about what's happened since the beginning, since they started operating back last June. And now the community is saying we're demanding answers because if the city and if the county is not going to do their job, then we're going to file this notice of intent to sue under the Clean Air Act.
Questions? I'm going to introduce my panel right now. Joining us, Dr. Mustafa Santiago, lead former senior advisor for environmental justice at the EPA. We also out of D.C., Randy Bryant, entrepreneur, author of Never Say It, 25 Phrases You Should Never Ever Say to Keep Your Jobs and Friends. Also D.C., Joe Richardson, civil rights attorney out of L.A. Mustafa, this is your lane. I'll start with you.
Yeah, well, Brad, it's good to see you and continue the good fight. You know, it's curious. So there, of course, there are the state environmental regulations. On the federal side, we've got NEPA. You've got Title V permits. You've got a number of different things that folks have to go through to be able to, legally run these types of things. What's the analysis look like in relationship? I'll just stay on the EPA side of the equation, the various environmental laws, statutes, and regulations that folks have to be in compliance with.
Bray, did you hear Mustafa's question?
I did not hear your question. No.
Let's see if we can try it again. Mustafa, see if you can ask it again, and then let's see if Bray can hear.
Okay. Well, Brad, first of all, I was saying it's good to see you.
I did.
Yeah. So let me put it in context. So we know that we've got a couple 100,000 people who are dying prematurely from air pollution. We know these turbines are going to be causing additional impacts. My question was, there are state regulations that folks have to follow. Then, of course, on the federal side of the equation, we've got everything from NEPA to Title V permits to a number of other laws, statutes, and regulations that folks have to be in compliance with to even be able to get a permit. So my question is, staying on the EPA side of the equation, how are folks able to move forward on these various sets of things that have to be in place before you can even start business?
Yeah. Well, typically, I guess from the standpoint of the company themselves, they have to look at what the different standards are, for example, as it relates to clean air. And so if you have, for example, 35 gas turbines that are running and operating, they have to apply for permits to ensure that they are actually able to run those turbines actually in a community. The community itself also has the ability to ask questions because these processes are supposed to be open to the public. So, for example, if someone applies for a permit, that's information that the community should be able to find out. And that's how, for example, the community found out that these turbines were operating without any permits at all. There's also the way that this can move forward from a community standpoint as well, is that they also look at, for example, their county Department of Health, or depending on the state, there's other potential regulating agencies who are part of that process. In this situation, we have the Shelby County Department of Health, who should be saying whether or not operating this many gas turbines at a particular time, whether or not that is detrimental to people's health. And in this situation, the Shelby County Department of Health has also dropped the ball by not actually making that recommendation, by not actually making that clear to XAI as well. But XAI also is supposed to be running a permitted operation, which they're not.
All right, Joe.
I surmise, I understand why you're suing the company, but given that the city is at the very least complicit, is there any thought to possibly now or at some other point actually bringing something or involving the city and or what are supposed to be the regulating agencies related to this on top of bringing claims against the company?
Well, we absolutely have continued to say that we believe that there are a lot of individuals and agencies who have been a part of failing South Memphis. And so we are keeping our options open as to additional ways to ensure that we're fighting with the community in South Memphis. And we have not taken any potential legal actions off the table.
Andy?
Has anybody been to XAI to actually evaluate what is happening right now? I mean, it seems as if there's like a dark mystery and we don't even know what's happening there. Has anybody actually been able to tour the plant? Have any inspections happened? I mean, at all, or are they just allowed to run with no regulation?
The community is doing what they can, and they're asking questions when they can. Unfortunately, there have not been many opportunities for the community to ask the regulating agencies and bodies what they've actually done in order to ensure their health, in order to ensure their safety. And so a lot of the information, it's either bits and pieces of information of just knowing the clear violations of the law, or the community having to take matters into their own hand to figure out, for example, how many gas turbines are operating at a particular time unpermitted in their community. But I agree. This is something where the this is where your elected officials should be standing on behalf of the community to make sure that there's more transparency. This is where your regulating agency bodies should be standing on behalf of the community members to make sure that there's transparency about any deals that have been created, about what they have uncovered in their conversations. And unfortunately, a lot of that information has not been made public.
All right, then. Bray, we appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Keep us abreast what happens in this story next.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
The Veterans Administration, under a new rule, is literally saying that doctors don't have to actually serve as Democrats or unmarried veterans. This is an order from the twice impeached, criminally convicted felon-in-chief, Mr. Bone Spurs, who's never served in the military. The policy extends, y'all, to psychologists, dentists, and other healthcare professionals. It's already being implemented at some VA medical centers. Now, while VA staff may still treat veterans regardless of race, color, religion, or sex, they are now permitted to decline care based on personal characteristics that are not explicitly protected under federal law. VA hospitals have authority to exclude physicians and other medical personnel based on their union activity, marital status, or political party affiliation. The Department of Veteran Affairs, y'all, is the nation's largest integrated healthcare system, comprising more than 170 hospitals, more than 1,000 clinics, employs 26,000 doctors, and serves 9 million patients annually. That absolutely, Omekongo, is trash.
Wow. I mean, this is what I mean when I say no more laws, that just norms, and you don't have to really obey them. Deny Democrats care because of their political affiliation. This goes to what I just said about Senator Mike Lee in terms of being on the right side of history moment. Where are the Republican veterans going to stand as it relates to this? Are the people who they served with in Vietnam and Afghanistan and all of these places really their brother, really their sister? Trump, when people came up with that whole taco thing, Trump always chickens out. Trump does back down when he's confronted en masse, when people stand up and say no. And so if other Republicans and other Republicans who claim to support and love the military, if they don't get out and say something about this, these types of things are going to continue. And so this is just another way that, and I'm not even going to say that this is a distraction because this is real, to deny veterans the care that they need psychologically, emotionally, physically, that's a death trap for them and their families. And so in order to do that right now, again, this is the time where everybody needs to stand up and show exactly where they are. And for any Republican soldiers or Republican veterans or Republican Congress people and senators who claim that they care about the military and we speak up on this, their hypocrisy is real. And this is when we just continue to march towards that next election because they all got to go.
Julian, there's no way in hell if Joe Biden did this, Republicans will be silent.
No, this is absurd. Look, this person never served a day in the military. Not a person in his family, from those no good grifting sons of his to the daughters, has served a day in the military. And yet, what they come up with is something punitive toward veterans, punitive in terms of saying, well, any individual worker, they're not saying we won't treat you, but any individual physician, as an example, can say to an unmarried woman, an unmarried female veteran, let's be clear, that I don't want to treat you. They can, obviously, there's some implications here around choice and issues around reproductive health. So if someone needs something around those issues, the doctor may feel free to say, oh, no, I don't feel like doing that. And don't drive up into the parking lot with a Biden sticker on your car, because you very well may then be denied health care. This is absurd, but it is consistent. And Congo is absolutely right. Here's the deal. When will Republicans who have good sense, and I realize that's a shrinking population, but when will Republicans with good sense who know better stand up and say, oh, hell no? And the fact is that they drank the Kool-Aid, every little bit of it, and then they put their tongue back into the glass to get the grains out. They are afraid to go against this man. But if they go against him on issues like this, they're basically letting us know what kind of patriots they are. What we right now know is that they basically are, like I said, they drank the Kool-Aid. He's Jim Jones, and they're about to die.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hegseth III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.